it's fascinating because Superman is about Clark Kent hiding his superpowers, that he is Superman. And that is basically what Cleveland still is to this day. There is a ton of people in Cleveland that have superpowers, that have amazing talent, that are just walking around as Clark Kent all day long, hidden until, at night they're willing to take their Clark Kent off and expose the Superman that they are. And that's how I was for a long time. I was just Clark Kent during the day. But I knew that inside I had like superhuman powers with what I could do. And I just hoped that someday I would be able to give back to the community.
One of the things that I thought when I was putting this together was the fact that, this is a piece of art. I am working on art, but it's something that I only started because of an interest that I had in other people. And I've learned more and more about myself through this process. And that's where I really was able to understand just how powerful self-expression can be. And it's because of that why I'm so excited to have on our guest today. And without further ado, I wanted to ask, who is David Biro?
That's a really good question. I would sit there and say that I'm an inventor, entrepreneur, installation artist, community activist, community builder, Clevelander, profound love for Cleveland my entire life, and someone who just tries to be more deeply connected to the community at large.
Wow. And how did you even wind up getting started with all of that?
That's a really good question. I can trace my roots back to I was just born with the talent to be able to build. And when I think about athletes probably have that same feeling at some young age. They know that they're just good with sports. And I knew from an early age that I was just good with building stuff. And I was the kid when I was young that was building tree houses in the wood and digging wood out of the trash and asking construction people that were building houses in my neighborhood, can I have the junk wood that's left over and we're going to drag it into the woods and go build a tree house. And then that just parlayed itself all the way over into when I was a teenager and when I went to college, and then becoming an inventor starting around 2006. And now I'm an installation artist, and I have a new art collective that I founded here in Cleveland called Midnight Art Club, and we build Burning Man art. And so that's kind of just a small glimpse of how from birth to present.
Now, does this art that you are building here, does it stay here?
We take art right now. We take art once a year down to Miami, Florida for Love Burn. It's the largest regional Burning Man event outside of Burning Man. It's about 8,500 to 8,800 people attend Virginia Key Beach in February. And for the past 2 years, we've been getting art grants to come down and bring our art. But before we were invited to Love Burn, I was building large-scale art. I begun that journey here in 2017, and that begun with an installation called Maya. That was 2017, 2018 was Maya. 2019 was Inception. 2020 was Ascent. 2021 was Jolly, and then Jolly went to Love Burn in 2022. And in 2022, we got the art grant for this past year, 2023, Palladium, which we took this past year.
So I mean, actually, I want to take a full step back. And at the very beginning, you had talked about being able to utilize the resources that you had in front of you through asking. And when you would receive these things from, what was left over from a construction site, you were able to take essentially scraps and turn it into art. And you had mentioned that it was something that you were more or less just born with. Now, take us deeper into exactly that, because I feel like that's something that even someone hearing still isn't able to understand.
It's weird to, when because I deeply think about this all the time. And I try to like find the connection with athletes at large. Like, what do athletes know at a young age for them to know that they're good at sports? And I try to relate that to myself of when I look back to just my childhood, I was just always very naturally good with tools and seeing things and just knowing how to build stuff. When I go to actually build something, even from a young age, I could just see it in my head perfectly. All the placements of whether it's the lumber or the fasteners, the brackets, the complex structure, take it all apart. And then to actually be able to translate that into the real world is, to me, I don't know, it's a pretty incredible talent. And it's tough. It's tough to really describe to people, because I ask people, like, what do you imagine? Like, what do you see, like, in your dreams? Like, can you see a box? Can you envision a box? Right? So it's like a simple thought experiment is, can you picture a box in your head, and then can you picture a frame for that box? And some people have told me that they can't picture a box in their head. They can't picture the frame for the box. Like, I can, with the art and the things that I've created, all the inventions that I've had, I've seen it in my head first, like down to the T, like spacing, where does everything got to go, multiple iterations of it. And then I'm able to take now that vision that I have and be able to translate it into CAD, right? Computer-aided design, like SolidWorks typically, and then render that into 3D form. And that's, from a deep standpoint, that's the only way I can relate it is I was just born with the talent, and then I knew and resisted the talent for a long time when I was a young kid. I loved to build when I was young. I built like a cabin in my backyard I was thinking about this, like 14 years old. Like, I built this honest to God like cabin, like little small house. It had to be like 10 feet by 10 feet. And we hung out in it for a summer. It was pretty cool. And then before that, like, I had tree forts in the woods. So it went from like tree forts in the woods to like a cabin in the backyard. And then I kind of like went off to college. And then that's kind of where I like lost myself. That's where I've like, in high school and college, I had somewhat of a traumatic upbringing with my parents. And it wasn't until I got to college that I found the peace that I was looking for. And it was during college that's when I also got into my like first relationship. I met a girl, and that melted down. Like, that was a complete meltdown. I kind of went through a midlife crisis in about 2004, 2005, ended up dropping out of college. And it was just I would sit there and say like 04, 05, 06 was some like really dark years, dark moments in my life, where I had to really go and find myself. And at that same point in time, when I was just working on myself, trying to become a better person and more educated, and really just finally go ahead and embrace the creative process, become who I am today. I was trying to be someone else for all that time when I went to college. I went away from being a creator to just, I don't even know who that person is anymore. And when I embraced the creativity again, when I embraced the fact that I love to build things and put things together, that's when I got the opportunity I met someone at the library, and they asked me to join their patent team and help them invent stuff. And that's what we did for the next 5-6 years until about 2010. and then the patents would go on to sell, and then I finally took the time to. I was broke during this whole time. Like I was broke during college, and then I was broke. Like I dropped out, and then I was broke, post college for a long time. I was spending all my money trying to invent this stuff, helping the team out, and with what we were crafting up, and then those patents would go on to sell, and then I would reap a financial reward for it, and it took me, traveling the world at that standpoint. So, yeah, I mean, the journey there is it's just a really, really fascinating journey. You told me not to touch the table. It's a really fascinating journey. Once again, and this is something that I did want to talk about, because Cleveland's not friendly to creatives and artists. Like, it's not an open town. Like, Cleveland treats its artists horrible, and I hate to sit there and say that. I only say that from my own personal perspective of what I've encountered over the decades and years of trying to be a creative, an artist, an entrepreneur, and an inventor in Cleveland. I always tell people I'm an inventor first, and I only became an artist recently. Like, I actually have a sample here with me today. And so, but that journey of becoming an inventor can be traced back to 2004, 2005, when I had the meltdown and my life was in full crisis mode, and I had to find myself. And I did find myself. It was a very, very beautiful point. It was a very tough point in life. And then to, just threw myself into education with engineering and physics, and put myself back together, and then getting the opportunity and working with that team, locking it all under non-disclosure agreements, because they agreed. Like, they're like, you're not, because I was getting shunned out at that point in time too in life in Cleveland. When I was embracing who I was in 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, like, a lot of people around me didn't like me for who I was. They didn't like me for the inventor that I was. They didn't like me for the creative that I was. So I was really just out there just by myself. But at the same point in time, people here in Cleveland are always trying to assimilate. They're always trying to find new friend groups. They're always trying to find, new people to hang out with, right? And for me, it was also a very, lonely journey in that time. But the friends that I had at the time were like, don't worry, it's going to work out. The inventions are going to sell, and you're going to reap the rewards for it, and then you're going to go on to do, they're like, what do you really want to do in life after all this? And I was like, I just really just want to travel. I just really just want to travel the world, and show people, at some point who I am as a creative person. I like to relate this to Superman, right? Superman was founded here in Cleveland, right? Joe Shuster, if I pronounce his name right, Jerry Siegel, right? And it's fascinating because Superman is about Clark Kent hiding his superpowers, that he is Superman. And that is basically what Cleveland still is to this day. There's a ton of people in Cleveland that have superpowers, that have amazing talent, that are just walking around as Clark Kent all day long, hidden until, at night they're willing to take their Clark Kent off and expose the Superman that they are. And that's how I was for a long time. I was just Clark Kent during the day. But I knew that inside I had superhuman powers with what I could do. And I just hoped that someday I would be able to give back to the community. And so the first thing I had to do was really learn the whole engineering process, creative process, community building process. And that took years. And Cleveland was the dark ages. Like, when I was growing up in Cleveland in my 20s, 2000, 2001, 02, 03, 04, you could walk down Euclid to 9th, around Voinovich Park, back up 9th, back down Euclid, and not see a single person, all year. I mean, it was a ghost town after 6 p.m. And there was just nothing going on in Cleveland during that time from what I can remember, because I was living downtown. I was going to Cleveland State, where I was, for all intensive purposes, was getting a degree in geology. People are like, why didn't you get an engineering degree? I'm like, I probably should have got an engineering degree. When I look back, I just have this love of nature. So I was like, I just want to spend all my time outside. I love rocks. Mm-hmm. I would then go back and I dropped out of college. And then I got like a post-bac degree in graduate gemology, so I could tell you everything about like gemstones and diamonds. And then when basically when the patents were basically up for sale and they were getting sold, I actually decided to return to college and finish the degree out. So I was still broke. I was working full time, 40 hours a week, and I ended up like taking 18 credit hours a semester and just smashing the curriculum. 3.8, 4.0, Dean's List, couldn't believe it. But it goes back to, once again, of finding the Clark Kents in our city, embracing the people that do have these superhuman powers in our city. And that's where the conversation really starts and begins, is how do we have a more productive and cohesive creative community, entrepreneurial community, inventor community. We have to embrace it. It starts by talking with one another, right? What is Cleveland culture? It goes back to, and I love to talk to people about this, is, our because I've traveled all over the world, and I go, our culture here in Cleveland is drinking. I'm like, I don't know if you've like been asleep at the wheel. We have like hundreds, if not thousands, of liquors permits within Cleveland. Like, it's like work and drink. And I almost want to feel like the great filter in Cleveland, if you're in the dating scene, is bottle service, right? And so, and then it brings in the dynamics, like the relationships dynamics that people have, the friendship dynamics that people have. And so, and if you're not a part of that, there's a lot of peer pressure I want to feel from a certain crowd at times to need to go out and need to be seen and need to be drinking. And I just wanted to show people, that there's a whole new way that you can live in Cleveland, that there is a creative way, there is creative outlets, and that there's other things that can be done to influence your city. So, find the Supermans within our city. People should really embrace that. It's a really beautiful story. It's amazing that Superman was invented here in Cleveland, and it shows truly who we are. That Clevelanders are a different breed. I mean, we really go through a lot of stress and trauma. We're put under a lot of grit, and we produce. I always tell my Burning Man friends from other cities, I'm like, when Cleveland finally discovers and taps into its true talent, we can pretty much outbuild anyone in America, because we have all that talent here in Cleveland. We have the steel mills, we have the forging plants, we have that industrial talent and might, and it hasn't been leveraged yet, truly been leveraged. I says the day that we can call up Acer Middle, it used to be Acer Middle, it's Cleveland Cliffs now. The day we can call up Cleveland Cliffs, or Cleveland Cliffs calls up artists in Cleveland and say, hey, we got 50 tons of steel that we're going to throw out, come get it. Or we got 50 tons of aluminum, come get it, right? We want to donate it. That's when Cleveland really starts to, when its industrial might really starts to get behind the creative community at large, is the day that Cleveland will really come out of their darkness. I do public art, and I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm out on an island all alone. And with the size of the public art that I do Burning Man art here in Cleveland with my art collective community, Midnight Art Club. It technically started out as Cleveland Design Studios, and that's kind of transitioned to Midnight Art Club. But I feel like we're bouncing around. So
yeah. So the Midnight Art Club is something that you started, correct?
The story of Midnight Art Club is very interesting, because Midnight Art Club started out as Cleveland Design Studios. Mm-hmm. So in 2017, actually the journey began in 2015 with the Biro Lumber Company. Me and my great friend, Peter Debelak, he built these two wooden bikes, and I was coming off an aerospace project with carbon fiber and composites. And Peter was like, my bikes are delaminating, like the wood's delaminating. I was like, Peter, that's interesting. I was like, I think we can take this, how we make carbon fiber over in the aerospace realm. We can take this process and let's apply it to wood. Right, so we went on the internet, did some research. It was like, is anyone else doing this in this way? And what I discovered was No one else was really doing it in this way. And I was like, interesting at the point in time. So we went and we did an experiment, and this was about 2015. We did an experiment. Got the little piece of wood here with me. We did the experiment. It turned out to be a smashing success. And as an inventor, I was like, business opportunity, right? Let's explore it further. And then 2016, I wanted to raise some additional funds to actually I was like, let's go ahead, form a company. Let's talk to the U.S. Forest Service, and let's see what the market's like, and let's see if other people are doing this. And we saw that there was an opportunity for possibly the creation of high-strength, low-cost of biocomposite lumber, right? And so I was talking to the U.S. Forest Service. They give out grants, and so I got some space in a warehouse here in Cleveland, and I was cooking up samples, believe it or not. So I was starting to create samples to send in for testing. And we went to, I believe the company was Benchmark Testings is where we sent the lumber samples to. So we actually did 3 rounds of testing. So I got like a second job, picked up some extra income, and then to cover the testing cost. And we sent in 3 rounds of testing. It was also at this point of time of creating samples and doing testing that in the midst of all this, I had free time as the samples were getting created to volunteer. Because in the building I was in, there was an art organization. So I wandered downstairs. And I was like, hey guys, I love to build stuff, love to create community, love to bring people together. What are you guys up to? And they're like, oh, we're creating art. And I was like, oh, pretty cool. Can I help create? And they're like, sure. And I was like, great. And so I come in, and because I'm like a quick builder, visualize things, start to put my talents, start to interact with the community. And I was like, can we build really large scale art? And they're like, oh, it's not possible or whatever. And I was like, really?
We'll see about that.
We'll see about that. And that's kind of where Cleveland Design Studios came in. Is I was like, well, maybe I could build large-scale art and start a community around it, give back. I wanted to give back. I finally, after inventing a ton of stuff, building a lot of projects, doing stuff that I could talk about. I had wearable computers. There's some here actually on the desk that I brought with me. That actually came before the lumber. So before I got into the lumber industry, I was doing wearable technology for a moment, and I took that to prototype phase. And that shifted over to lumber, and then that lumber kind of shifted over to Cleveland Design Studios. I was like, I think this will succeed. I'll give it a 5% chance of success. And I was like, let's just give it a shot. And I was using my startup skills and my entrepreneurial skills and my inventor skills to be able to reach across the table, the business skills that I have, to be able to reach across the table to people I knew in Cleveland, and was like, hey, I'm going to go build art. Would you donate to the cause? And I was expecting them to sit there and go, no, we're not going to give you any money to do arts and culture here in Cleveland. And I was perfectly fine with that. This is what we face in the startup industry all the time, is we face no's all the time. You walk in, you do your elevator pitch, you do your 30-second pitch, your 60-minute pitch, and they typically are like, this is what you need to change, this is what you don't need to change, yes and no, we'll invest, we won't invest. So I had no fear. I was like, we're going to reach across the table and see if people want to invest or not. And it actually came back, people were like, sure, we'll give you some money. And I was like, holy moly, this thing's actually going to go somewhere. And so that was the formation. I was like, now I got to give a title to it. I was like, well, call it Cleveland Design Studios. And so that's when I actually started to create artwork, started to create Maya. I started to go on and create Inception and Ascent. And then something interesting happened. This was Maya was thought of in 2017. And then in 2018, it was actually built, went on display. 2019 was Inception, and 2020 was Ascent. And then 2021, by this time I met a guy, Jack Trash is his playa handle. It's just like Burning Man name. We all have names in Burning Man. And
what's yours?
I don't have one yet. I don't know what it is. That'll come in its own due time. Mm-hmm. We don't have to rush. And so Jack was like, and I talked to Jack probably in 2018 or so. I first met him, but by 2021, he reached out and he was like, "Oh, you should come to Loveburn. We'll like give you an art grant." And I was like, "Oh, come to Miami with," because Jolly at that point in time, right, was Jolly is this Indo-Islamic art installation. So it had emergence between, Jolly is actually a type of Hindu architecture. It's primarily used in hot, arid, humid environments in India, and they use Jolly architecture to create enclosed rooms that are cooled down. So as the air flows through the Jolly panels, it actually cools the air down, gives privacy, and creates a cooler room to sit in. And so I used that as inspiration, and I created an art installation around it, big, beautiful dome. If you want to see the artwork, www.cledzn.com. So it was 23 feet by 23 feet, and it was about 17-foot dome. And he was like, Jack was like, "So do you want to come to Loveburn? Like, bring the art installation down." And I was like, I was like, I'm like, I got to like move like a small house to Miami and then put it all together and then take it all back apart, put it all back in a box, and then ship it back up. And I'm like, and then meanwhile, I'm like, I don't have like 3 friends to scratch together to be able to do it. I'm like, who am I going to get? So I called my friend Amir. I was like, "Amir, do you want to come to Loveburn?" And he was like, he's like 50-50. I called my friend Jeremy, and he was all about it. I was like, "Great, got Jeremy, maybe got Amir." And then I had my friend Ed Moore and Julian, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll go." But then what happened was like a week and a half before, they're like, "Oh, we can't go." And I was like, "Oh, damn it." You know what I mean? And I was like, now what am I going to do? Because I got to box this thing up, which I was already in the process of boxing it up, ship it down to Miami, put it all together in like 2 or 3 days, have a good time, and then tear it all apart, put it back in the box. And so we got to ship. With Burning Man, you got to ship, you got to take everything with you, all your supplies, all your food, all your water, and then you got to haul all your trash out. You got to haul everything out as well, too. So anything you take, you got to take it back out, right? And so I reached out to my friend Lola, who I knew at the time loosely. And she was doing acro yoga. She was building her own little community of acro yoga at Edgewater. And this was like pandemic, post-pandemic. And I was trying to find other burners here in Cleveland, other creatives here in Cleveland. And so I reached out to Lola at the last moment over Facebook. And I was like, "Hey, Lola, like, we sort of kind of don't know each other, but would you go to Miami, Florida with help me take art down there?" And believe it or not, she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh my God. Like, really?" She was like, "Yeah, I'll come." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." She's like, "Can I and I also needed someone else because we had to replace 2 people. She's like, "Can I bring my boyfriend at the time, Carrie?" And I was like, "Sure, yes." At this point, it doesn't even matter. And so that was the beginning. Tentatively, that was the beginning of Midnight Art Club. So it was me, Amir, Jeremy, Lola, and Carrie. 2022 went down to Miami. We got a $3K art grant. I actually screwed up on the shipping because my pallet was 2 inches over 8 feet, so they charged me double. It was just all part of the learning experience. But we went down, we put the art installation together, went beautiful. We had a great time, really bonded. And so I knew Amir from college, so we knew each other for a long time. I knew Jeremy for a few years, but I really didn't know Lola and Carrie, and they didn't know each other. So this was our first time as a group going down to Miami, putting art together, camping. That was interesting because I haven't camped at that point in a long time. So I was like, I got to spend a week in a tent and build an art installation. And I'm like, oh my God. So camping, but we were on the beach. So it was just an incredible experience. We had a really amazing time. And I told them when we were down there, I was like, we'll come back next year. We'll try to double the size of the group and we'll double the size of the art installation. And so we come back, we finish out Well, we actually came back, and then I actually had to rev back up because I proposed for Burning Man. I propose art for Burning Man every year. So we came back, and I actually had to start designing by May of that year. I had to start designing for next year's Love Burn, because it's a pretty intensive process. And so by that May and June, I designed Palladium, and I sat back down with Jack, and I was like, he's like, so what do you want to bring? And I was like, I got a doozy. And I'm like, I got a monster. And so that's when I showed him Palladium. Palladium is to reimagine if the Roman Empire never ended, what would have become of its architecture. And so Palladium is this 40-foot by 40-foot laser-cut wooden art installation that mimics, it's actually a public Roman forum. And so it's 300,000 plus inches of laser-cut wood, and that's set across 1/4-inch and 1/2-inch plywood.
So where do you do this? How do you put this all together?
You really don't. Everything's built in small modular sections, and then with the blueprints from SolidWorks. So everything's done in CAD and SolidWorks.
Yeah.
Key shot image out, hyper-realistic renderings out. So we got blueprints. And so we put it. So John, let's talk about the journey of Palladium to Loveburn. To Loveburn. So John's like, I'll give you 10 tickets and I'll give you some money. And I saw that because we also burn a temple at Burning Man, right, every year. And so they had picked a girl to build the temple, but I saw that maybe that wasn't going to work out. And I was like, just let me know if it doesn't work, and I got something for you guys. We'll figure something out. And so principal construction, Palladium principal engineering got done by July, August. Principal construction started in September after I came back from Eastern Europe. And it was in December so from September to basically February, I was laser cutting and putting together sections of Palladium and then getting it all on 4 pallets. So we took a 26-foot box truck, loaded it up with probably 8,000 pounds of materials and supplies. I mean, it was packed to the brim. We could barely close the door. So everyone's tents and hammocks and equipment that they needed, flow props, food. And so taking a moment to think. So in December, I was like, what's going on with the temple? And he calls me up and he's like, yeah, it's not going to work out. And I'm going to take a moment.
Yeah.
So John calls me up and he goes, yeah, it's not going to work out. Like, what are you doing with Jolly? They brought from the year before. He's like, do you want to burn it? And I remember leaning back in my computer chair in my room going, do I want to burn my art installation? And I was like, and at this point too, I also knew I had to move my studio because they were going to tear the building down. And I was like, well, I got to get rid of stuff. And I was like, do I want to burn my art installation? And I was like, yes, let's go ahead and burn it. And I was like, since I got to bring that as well too, do I get more money, more tickets? He was like, yeah, redo your budget. And that actually ended up working out because they gave us more money. They gave us 20 tickets. So now we were going to take 2 art installations. I was like, you're going to have to find your own people to build this. I can give them blueprints. I can come by, give them pointers, but you're going to have to find your own people. They said, oh, yeah, we got our own people. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay, great. And so we ended up loading up. Jolly was already on a pallet, flat packed from the previous year, and I moved it to a pallet with wheels on it, and then I put Palladium on a pallet, 3 pallets, 3 4x8 pallets. And then there was a runoff in the truck of stuff that couldn't fit on the pallet for Palladium, and Jolly, I believe, but I think Jolly was mostly on a pallet. And we went down to Miami, but we had 20 people at this point. And so I went back to Lola, and I was like, we got to find more people to invite. I don't have 20 friends I can scratch together. So I was like, who are we gonna get to come? Honestly, it was a real challenge. I was like, but by the time we were going to leave, we didn't have a problem. We probably could have gave 10 more tickets away. And we had to call ourselves something. We actually had to come as a theme camp. So there was the name of the art installation, and then there was the theme camp. And so we decided to, I was like, what are we going to call ourselves? We were sitting there with Lola and Carrie and myself, and I was like, what are we going to call ourselves? And now my friends, like my Burning Man friends here, sort of burner friends, they love to be up till midnight. And I also think that the art apocalypse is coming here to Cleveland, like the arts and cultures. I always feel like it's about to cease to exist. And so I always, for me, I had like the doomsday clock in my head. I was like, 30 seconds to midnight. We're at 5 seconds to midnight, 4 seconds to midnight. I was like, I have the doomsday clock, like the midnight, right? At midnight, the art apocalypse comes. Like, I will save art. Like going back to Superman once again, right? I'm going to take off the Clark Kent suit to come out, in my Superman cape, and I'm going to save this city. I firmly believe I'm going to save this city. And yeah, so I was like, what do you guys think about Midnight Art Club? Like, because they were throwing out some crazy names. I was like, I don't know about that. I was like, what do you guys think about Midnight Art Club? And they're like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And so that's what we called ourselves. We went as Midnight Art Club, and we had 20 people, and we had a truck fully packed, and we went to Miami. And this was a group of 20 people that somewhat knew each other, but really didn't know each other. And it was a diverse group as well, too. So we had, and I'm very proud of that, we had Asians, we had Latinos, we had African Americans, and Caucasians. So it was a very diverse group of people from Cleveland that were going to Miami, Florida, at least with a 40-foot by 40-foot art installation, which is massive. And it was massively complex. And we were going to have to put it together in less than 3 days. And I was just like, I don't even know if this is possible. So we show up, and so they released the map like 3 days before we leave. And I'm like, and at 40 feet by 40 feet, you'd need really flat ground. And I know the site. And so they give us where they're going to place it at. And like, oh, no. I'm like, the ground I know there is not flat, and this is going to be a problem. But I called some people, and they're like, oh, no, it's flat. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. So we get there Sunday night. I immediately get the tape measure out, start surveying the site. I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. And so sure enough, like Monday morning rolls around. I'm like, this site, we're so screwed. Like our art installation is going to be off. Like we're going to have to jack it up like a foot. Like I need flat ground. And so one of the founders comes by of Love Burn, and I'm like, you completely have misplaced the art installation. She goes, I didn't realize it was this big. I was like, I gave you guys blueprints, key shot renderings, and so I was like, okay, give me a hug. And I was like, screw it, we'll just build it right here. And I was like, because the clock's ticking, I'm like, we can stand here all day and argue about it, or just get to work. And I was like, let's just get to work. And so at that point, I was like, let's just break out the tools and start getting to work. At that point, we got like people showing up, we got to set up camp. There's a lot of moving pieces going on. And so people started to show up throughout the day, and we immediately started to unload the truck and start to place out the art installation and start to assemble it. And there was like 4 of us in the beginning. I was like, I'm like, I'll work the hardest, no problem. This is what I do. Superman's coming out. I know how this goes together. I have the blueprints. We got multiple copies. And we'll just put people to work, designate them out. Yeah. And so what occurred then over the next, so that day was rough. The ground was uneven. I realized we were in for quite the challenge. And so by that night, we had most of the crew was there. We set up camp, getting things situated. We had our bar set up. And I went to bed that night, and I saw what a challenge we had. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to get this done in the next 2 days. I was like really concerned. I woke up Tuesday morning, and I was like just laying there. It's like 7:30 in the morning. I was just like, it was at that moment I was like, I don't want to get out of bed. But you're the leader. that's the reason that everyone's here, right, is because of you. And so I was like, the only thing I could do is just work, which is what I'm good at. Right? And so they kind of like realized this, like Dave's going to wake up with the tool belt on. He's going to get his drill out. Once we start to hear the drill, then I'm going to wake everyone up with the drill. So I just got out, got some coffee, put the tool belt on, got the drill out, and just started building. And what happened over the next 12 hours was nothing short of a miracle. Because by midday, by 2 o'clock, we were making great progress. And I was like, oh man, like we're close. And I was like, if I could just manifest. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen if we're going to get it done tonight. It looks like it's possible. And so sure enough, by 7 o'clock, it was like 7:45, we got the principal construction done on the art installation, and I was beyond ecstatic. Like, it's just such a miracle that the team came through, pushed in that like final 5 hours in the heat, came together, pushed through, and got the art installation together. I mean, there was 269 decorative panels that had to be put on the columns. You know, we had an overhang that surrounded the entire structure, and because we were off on elevation, even if you're at 40 feet, everything gets amplified. So if you're off a 16th, it's going to be off a half an inch, right? And everything's like precisely cut. All the panels are laser cut. So I'm like, we know that things are going to be way off. And so it was a real struggle for pushing and pulling. It's a great thing about what you can push and pull to get things into place. And we got it together. And so when we all sat down at like right around 7:30, 8 o'clock, I was like, the principal construction is done. Congratulations, great job. You guys are free to do what you want tomorrow. Because that's what I wanted. I wanted them to have a chill day Wednesday. They put in 2 full days of work, really hard days of work. And we all like went out for a walk that night, had a blast on the beach. We discovered like an abandoned sailboat. We really, really had a blast. And then Wednesday, from there on, we had a great time. I finished up with the lights and some other stuff, and then we had a blast. And it was at that standpoint that we saw something else was occurring. Me and Amir were walking the one night, and we saw such engagement and community interaction and building that it was like, something else is happening right now. And I was like, the only way to keep it going with what we're seeing is to come back and put it behind an organization and bring structure, bring the business knowledge that we have forth for them. And that's exactly what we did. And we came back, and I was like, we're going to have monthly meetings, and we're going to build out an organization. And that's what we have been doing since we came back in February.
Yeah.
And now we're at, it's like, watch what you wish for. You know, when I started the journey, that's all I wanted was to build community. And I was like, watch what you wish for, because that stuff will come true. And it leaves me in silence half the time, because we just met last night. We had a core meeting last night. We had 12 people there. And all our monthly meetings are around 15 to 20 people on a Monday night. And we could probably even have more people if we wanted. I mean, we are at 60 members now, of different levels of participation. But we at least have 20 to 25 people that participate regularly, and we're growing. So Cleveland what's been happening in Cleveland is Cleveland's been boiling with talent and creativeness and artistry.
Who comes to your mind specifically?
No one comes to my mind. This is just the population itself, right? Every Clevelander that you could imagine, anybody walking down the street. It's the people that you don't know about, that you just find out in passing that's so beautiful. And that's what I've discovered, is that there's so much creative talent that's been simmering and bubbling, and they're around trying to find galleries and outlets, trying to find parks and groups and collectives. Where can I join? What can I participate in? How can I contribute back? And when we founded, when we finally got Midnight Art Club together and we came back and we started to tell our friends, started to broadcast, it's just been an explosion, an exponential growth. And we're only getting started. And so I was like, first it was like 1, then we were 5, and now we're 20, and now we're at 60. And I says, if we keep adding people on, we're going to be at 100 before the end of the year. We could be at 1,000 in a few years with different people at different levels of participation. We're collecting Cleveland talent that just wants to participate in something. We don't mediate the participation. We sit there and say, come join us. Tell us what your strength is, and we're going to exploit your strength. We're going to find what you're really great at, where you tell us what you're really great at. We're going to want to use that. And it's just been such an incredible journey. I'm mostly brought to silence half the time because I just remember when it was myself, a lot of hot days, a lot of sacrifice when everyone was out at like partying, having a great time on the weekend, just sacrificing towards the craft, towards like, you got to put the hard work in. Like no one's going to come and help you for your dreams. I tell myself that every day. No one's coming. No one's coming to do what you want. No one's coming for your goals. No one's going to come help you with your vision, with what you want to do in life. And I was telling that to my one board member. He was commenting on, he's like, maybe you read this book or that book. I was like, you read all the books you want. The books aren't going to build your life. And he started laughing. He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, the only thing to do is to get out there and just do it. I love talking to young kids, especially a lot of the young team members I have, because we help bring experience that like me and Amir didn't have. We didn't have this ability in the early 2000s. We didn't even have this as an option. So to be able to bring a community forth, a way for people to be able to participate in something so new, I like to sit there and say we're talking about mission statement. We're a collaborative community, so everyone has input into the organizational build out. So we're trying to craft up a mission statement right now. So the latest mission statement I came up with is we're a radical social experiment that seeks to build community through art, performance, and personal growth. And so that art, radical, that links us to the 10 principles of Burning Man: expression, inclusion, and reliance. Social, midnight, birth and death, right? The end of a day, the beginning of a new day. Experiment, it's magical, it's mystical, it's ritual. We don't know, so it's to explore the unknown to make it known. And then building community, so human engagement, right? How does people, the public at large, engage with art? And then the different forms of art. That's not installation art, Burning Man art, what I do, culinary arts. We have fire performers, we have flow performers, I have drone operators, we got videographers, we have photographers, we have dance instructors, we have engineers. I mean, the plethora of talent that Midnight Art Club has, even within a small group of itself, is an incredible talent. We got software people. And we're able to take those resources and be able to build such a beautiful thing because we're able to start to pull from each other. What are you good at? What are you not good at? We could use that over here, this over here. And then personal growth. One of the mottos that we have is, at least if you hang out with me, I tell this to my friends, is growth is not optional, it is mandatory. I'm going to make you grow as a person if you hang out with me. And that's the thing, I don't think that's probably why I don't have a lot of friends, is I like to concentrate my time on giving back to Cleveland, building community, trying to make the city an amazing place, working with the city of Cleveland right now on public art. I'm probably listen, they're not ready. okay, for me to say this, but I'm like one of the only people that's doing installation art, like large-scale public installation art within the city of Cleveland. No one's going to like that. But that's just what I see with the structures that I bring. Anything under, all my structures are at least 10 feet by 10 feet. And so we got Line of Sight, which is pretty cool. That was a collaboration with Bob Peck. He's a local iconic graffiti artist, and that is bringing his graffiti art into 3D form. And that was for NBA All-Star. We didn't make it. That actually was built. It went out for the Can Triennial, went outside the Pivot Center. And so when I asked Bob, who's a lifelong graffiti artist, very iconic within the art community here in Cleveland, I was like, has anyone ever done this before, Bob? Created large-scale graffiti art in 3D form. He goes, and what I'm always expecting is like, oh, this is done all the time. I was like, oh, okay, great. We're just adding to it. He's like, no, this has never been done. I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing now? And he's like, this is going to be a big deal for the region because first time that that you're linking up a graffiti artist with an installation artist, and what you're getting is this big 3D graffiti art installation. And that was Line of Sight. I just got lost in thought. I just got lost in thought. Yeah, that was Line of Sight.
I think what we have been able to understand through listening, through watching, is not only the passion that you have for what you do, but everything that happens behind the scenes.
You want to hear a crazy story? Okay, so public art. We're talking about public art, like Line of Sight and then Maya. Right, so everyone knows the corner of Carnegie in Ontario, right, where Progressive Field is, or Jacobs Field.
Yeah.
Right across the street, there's a little.
You're okay. Do you need something? Okay.
She got to your phone.
Yeah.
Okay. So right across from Progressive, I'll tell you the story of this is crazy. This is how crazy public art is in Cleveland, trying to work with the city. It's just a process. And so right across the street from Progressive Field, at the corner of Carnegie, Ontario, is a little triangular green space. And it's been vacant for a long time. And so I had Maya, and I've been seeing this vacant green space, and I was like, that's a perfect place for public art. We want to put public art in highly visible locations here in Cleveland because you don't see a lot of public art here in Cleveland, right, especially large-scale installation art. So I approached the city, and I talked to Tara Petrus, public art coordinator, amazing person. She's had to put up with a lot with me. And I was like, Tara, I want to put art there. She's like, and so we get on the auditor's website, and she's like, oh, the state of Ohio owns it, right? And she's like, you got to talk to the state. So I call the state up. I was like, it's Dave Biro, I want to put art here on this green space. Auditor's website says you guys own it. And so I was talking to this guy, and then he put me in touch with another guy named, so we were doing the due diligence with the state. The state's like, okay, you got to fill out this environmental permit, here's the permits. And the state's like, let us check real quick. And I was like, okay. And then the state comes back, and the state's like, well, we don't own the property. I was like, yeah, you do. It says it right there on the auditor's website. You guys own the property. No, we don't own it. The city owns it. Really? Do they know that? I don't know. They should know it. So we go back to the city. We talk to James Del Rosa. Get on the phone with Tara. Hey, Tara. Yeah. State says, you own this property. No, we don't. I said, that's what they're saying. So we get everyone on an email chain. The state, the county, I got the city, I got real estate, I got like 20 people on the email chain. Right? And it's funny, it's hilarious. They're like going back and forth, like, state's like, you own it. City's like, you own it. State's like, you own it. And finally, like, the city succeeds, like, oh, okay, I guess we do own the property. And so I was like, great, okay, this gets hashed out. Okay, time to go before design review and city planning. So we go before downtown design review, passes with flying colors, go before city planning, passes with flying colors. So first, I had to help the city discover a piece of land that, they didn't know they owned. Crazy. So we go before design review, city planning pass, and then we have to wait on public works. And then we don't hear nothing. We don't hear it. And I was like, and it doesn't get out to display. So we move Maya over to Kirtland Park off the Shoreway, Goodrich Kirtland Park. Once again, design review, city planning gets passed, finally goes out. But I never gave up on Carnegie and Ontario. So we revisit Carnegie, Ontario. We go through design review and city planning again, and it gets held up. And then we find out, by this time the Metro Parks put a sign on that piece of property. I go, Tara, there's a Metro Park sign on your property. Do you know about this? Like, did they get a permit? Did they get approval? She goes, I'll check in on that. Thank you for letting me know. And then she comes back, she goes, they have a lease on that property. They have a lease on the property. What? When did they get a lease? That was approved like over a year ago. When did they get the lease? We don't, they got a lease. They're leasing the property. You got to work with the Metro Parks. And I'm like, God bless the Metro Parks. Mm-hmm. They're tough to deal with. And I was like, Tara, I'm not working with the Metro Parks. We tried. I tried calling them, talking to them. We hope to work with them someday. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But at the same point in time, I didn't abandon it. I was like, because I asked the Metro Parks, it's like, you guys have a lease agreement. What's this lease agreement about? When did you guys get it? We're not telling you that. I says, why not? It's going to be public knowledge anyways. Well, you filed public records request. I was like, okay. I was like, whatever. And so I'm sitting there at night. I'm like tossing and turning. I can't believe I've been approved for the location twice and I've been denied by the Metro Parks. Like there's some paperwork. And all I wanted was the backstory. So I finally call Matt Schultz back from the Ohio Department of Transportation. I'm like, Matt, what's the story with the green space? And he's like, I was new on the job when you called about that years ago. But he goes, here's the story. When they put the main Inner-Belt Bridge in, the state got with the Metro Parks and carved out the lease for the green space in the parking lot underneath the bridge. And that parking lot, the fees that they generate from that parking lot sustains that land that they have. And they've had that since they redid the main Inner-Belt Bridge. And I'm like, and the city didn't know. Not this entire time. When I first approached the city didn't even know. All the city had to do is go, you want to use that piece of property? Oh, yeah. By the way, Metro Parks has a lease on it. Mm-hmm. And he goes, Dave, you wouldn't believe all the stuff that's mismarked, on the auditor's website.
Yeah.
And it was just, and I don't understand why the Metro Parks just couldn't tell me hey, we got the lease agreement when they put the main Inner-Belt Bridge in.
Yeah.
Before you even proposed this. And I was like, and that would have been it could have been a lot of energy saved. And so this is just part of the process of what an installation artist or a public art artist basically has to go through in Cleveland. It's like, I gotta walk around City Hall and stomp around and ask a bunch of questions. And it's just a process thing this. They're not ready.
Yeah, and you can totally tell that based off of how you speak about it and the different avenues that you've needed to go down to get it all settled, that it's in some cases frustrating, but then also gives you the opportunity to have a sense of fulfillment once something is either uncovered or accomplished ultimately. And through all of what I have heard you say, passion is what I see and feel coming off of you and your words. So with that, I wanted to ask, what makes David smile?
I thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
What makes me smile is the future. You can make the future anything you want. Your life could be in shambles right now, but you can put yourself together and build an incredible future. You can still build up a whole new life. You may have an amazing life right now, but the future is such light. To be able to build anything you want, carve out an existence. I just want to I think I'm going to take a moment. That way you have a ton of sound bites. But I mean, what really makes me smile is the future and what the future can be, and the fact that you can invent the future, you can create the future. You can manifest the future. There's so much promise and light in the future itself. So no matter how dark the day is right now, always know that the light is there and the light is calling you. And you just have to step into the light. And that's what makes me smile at the end of the day, knowing I can just give back to my city, contribute back to my city, transfer my talents back to my city, build an amazing city, help build out an amazing city, work with not only local leaders and city leaders and organizational leaders. And that's what Cleveland needs. Cleveland needs a time of healing and reflection. We need to come together. A whole new generation of people have grown up. People like myself are now coming into, their 30s and 40s, and it's on us. A lot of people are retiring and moving on and settling down, and it's on to us. And the future can be anything we want. And it's just amazing that I'm at the point that I'm at and to be able to give back.
Where can people follow you? How can they see every bit of what you are doing? Where can they go for them to see what you're showcasing?
So you can follow me at, if you want to look at my art, there's a couple websites. First website is cledzn.com. That's cledzn.com. MidnightArtClub.com. We're going to have that website up and going soon. You can check us out on Instagram. My own personal handle is D_BIRO_. You can also check out Midnight Art Club on Instagram. That's Midnight Art CLE. And yeah, I think that's it for following me. I think that's it. Let's see, website, Instagram, yeah. Oh, and you can go on Facebook. I'll let you, or else if you also want to follow me, you can follow me on Midnight Art Club. Just search Midnight Art Club on Facebook if you'd like to join. Open enrollment. It costs nothing to join, nothing to support. Once again, hit that like button, hit that join button, ask to join. Come in, check us out. If you feel like you want to contribute or participate more, let us know, reach out. We're here to stay. We're growing. We're going to bring amazing things, big art, big performances, and we're going to grow through it all.
Thank you for allowing us to get a peek inside your mind. I just can't get over how extraordinary your ability to take a thought and put it into something that becomes tangible. I mean, literally, I just want to take one moment for me to say and for you to acknowledge that you had talked about having like a skill or something that you were born with, but it's so much more than that, and there's so many different levels to it. I mean, think about it. You are able to come up with an idea, and you are able to formulate exactly what it is that you feel as though you think that you need to know to be able to turn it into something that you can touch, something that you can feel. And then you go from the point of being able to internalize that or think about it and conceptualize it to then being able to translate it into something like AutoCAD. It's one thing to think about it. It's a totally different thing to translate those thoughts into AutoCAD or some bit of 3D rendering. And then on top of that, then you need to build the thing. So you're talking about construction, you're talking about digital construction, and then you're talking about mental construction on top of that. So please, as much as you can, acknowledge the true talent that you have and continue to do every bit of what you do to provide the value to the cities and spaces that you are building and expressing yourself, and continue to support, educate, and grow those that are allowing you the opportunity to have that impact on their life. David, thank you so much for coming in. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Good deal.